Tell us the findings of this and how we've been talking about this for so long, but what does the new evidence show?
Bankwest Curtin Economics Centre is a research institute that we at the agency have had a relationship with now for over 5 years. And over that 5-year period, they have taken our longitudinal data set of data from the data we collect from organisations in the private sector in Australia. They've taken that data set and they've looked at the ASX listed companies. So they've taken a subset of it, and they, for the first time ever that we can ascertain, have found a causal relationship between increasing the share of women in leadership positions and increased performance, productivity and profitability.
So when it comes to Australia's performance, I know, really excellent pressure being placed by organisations or groups like the 30% Club, for example, but are we still behind? Is there enough progress being made? And are companies, I guess, risk being left behind in that respect, particularly when it comes to how investors feel with that, the ESG focus now more important than ever?
I think in Australia, we were one of the first countries to adopt mandatory reporting around gender equality in workplaces. We've been collecting this data for 6 years. We're now in the process of collecting our 7th year of data, and we collect very broad data. So we collect data on 6 gender equality indicators. And on almost all of those indicators, we have seen progress. And I think that whilst people love league tables to see how we're comparing, across the globe, we need to be very, very careful of those league tables because we're comparing apples with oranges. For instance, no two countries measure their gender pay gap in exactly the same way. And when we look at those league tables, they're taking different data sets from different countries. So comparing what we do with other countries I believe is problematic. I think we need to focus on what we're doing in this country. We are doing well. We have seen an increase, for instance, in the number of women in management roles. So in Australia today, 39.4% of all managers in Australia in our data set are women. Last year, over 41% of promotions into management went to women. And if we keep that trajectory in place, we will see equity at most management levels by 2030. So, we are doing well. Of course we could do better. Of course things aren't going as quickly as I would like, but we are making progress, and we need to ensure that we keep on this road towards gender equality, particularly as we move into an economic recovery.
So, Libby, what are the performance and profitability metrics where having women actually made a difference? And do you have sort of a market value, for example, for having, say, a female CEO?
So the report that we released last week actually showed that if a company in the ASX in Australia had a female CEO, they had a 5% increase in market value compared to the other average ASX companies, which equated to nearly 80 million Australian dollars. So, the evidence is there. This is something that we have suspected for a long time, but we now have the hard evidence and that causal link.
So you work with so many different organizations. How difficult has it been to sort of achieve this cultural change, especially when you're talking about smaller organizations that don't necessarily have the luxury to go looking for women to participate in their businesses?
I think the issue here is that we all have an obligation to ensure that we are providing workplaces and opportunities for women and men. And after all, we're talking about half the population of the world here. But what the evidence is now telling us is that this isn't just the right thing to do, this is the smart thing to do. And it is difficult, and we understand that. But it just requires that little bit of extra effort to ensure that, your friend's daughter gets the same opportunity as your friend's son. And I think these, if we put it in those contexts, we are starting to see some cultural change. It is easier for bigger organisations, I understand that. But that doesn't mean that we drop the ball and do nothing. And I think at a time where we're seeing far more women unemployed than men, we must ensure that we provide everybody with that equal opportunity to re-engage in the workforce. I mean, in Australia today, our female workforce participation rate has dropped nearly 3% in as many months. We've got to move that figure back up again. It's not going to be easy, but if we keep our foot on the pedal and we all remain focused, we can do this.